Welcome back to Epic Agents, the Best in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Ham, and joining me today is Alec Cantley. He's a highly successful broker serving the Asheville, North Carolina market. He's affiliated with the premier Sotheby's International Realty Brokerage. Alec, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this. I wrote a post for our website not too long ago, highlighting the top 10 individual agents in the Asheville market. And of course, you were on that list, solidly in the top 10. And honestly, Alec, from judging by our conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, if you close on something this year, you might be solidly in number one in the Asheville market.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to dive into this. When we did talk a few weeks ago, just a introductory call to kind of get to know each other. That really kind of turned into a master class for me. I took a lot away from that conversation. So this is going to be great. Alec, before we dive into the work that you're doing right now, share for listeners a little bit of your background, a little bio on you, hometown, education, and previous career.
Sure. I am originally from Charleston, South Carolina. My family moved just east of Asheville. There's a great little town about 20 minutes east of Asheville, Black Mountain. We moved there in 1995 and was blessed enough to grow up here in the mountains of Western North Carolina. After I graduated high school, kind of kind of hopped around schools a little bit, trying to figure out really what I wanted to do. My dad was a builder, and I had planned to really pursue that. That was a passion of mine. But graduating, in that '07, '08 time, that was not really the ideal time to get into construction. So ended up back in Asheville to finish school. That at least was the plan, and was fortunate enough to get a job in real estate through a Craigslist ad. And that was, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago. So this has pretty much been it for me outside of, some odd jobs here and there. I was working at the mall prior to this, selling shoes. And so that was my previous gig.
Was that commission?
It was hourly, but we did
Uh-huh.
we did make a little bit commission when we'd sell our insoles and that sort of thing. So
Sure.
I guess that was my first taste of the commission-based business.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the '07, '08 period was not a great time to
Yeah.
be entering the workforce for sure. A tough time to get into real estate, but a lot of the brokers I've spoken with that launched their career right around that time, who have stuck with it. Basically, I don't know. I've interviewed quite a few brokers that are very successful that launched right around that time, and there's got to be a
Yeah.
reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, my path into real estate was a little different than most, and I always consider myself to be pretty fortunate. When I was hired on, it was for a new boutique company starting in Asheville, and the guy that hired me ended up his assistant at the time went on maternity leave right shortly thereafter. And so I just kind of got thrown in the deep end. He was like, "Hey, you're going to be my new assistant." The day I got hired, he immediately had me signed up for real estate class, and I think a day later I'm sitting in my first real estate class. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, but those 2.5 years, I was his assistant for roughly 2.5 years, and that just changed everything in terms of my perspective because I think it gave me the freedom of not necessarily having to worry about the next commission check because I was a hourly employee, but he also really gave me a long leash and allowed me the opportunity to work with clients and kind of learn the business. And so he was at the time, one of the top agents in Asheville. He's now one of the top agents in Hilton Head. He and his wife Allison are down in Hilton Head now, absolutely killing it. And it was just an amazing opportunity to kind of learn under him and then kind of launch out on my own from there. And so that's always some advice I recommend for brand new agents is regardless of if it's a administrative position or an hourly position, just finding experienced brokers in the firm that are willing to mentor and give advice and just finding time to be around those people undoubtedly is going to create opportunities because the top agents always tend to have more business than they know what to do with. And so, you suddenly you're just hanging around and one day it's like, hey, I want to like I've got a buyer for you, or let's go on this listing appointment together. So I think that was a really a critical piece of my development as a broker.
That was a great way to launch your career, wasn't it? I'm sure that you learned a ton from him during that time.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it was fun too because, we were literally creating a company at that point. I mean, the day I got hired, I met him at the office. They were literally hooking up the printer. He had just signed the lease. He and his wife had worked the previous year out of their garage. And so, I was one of, if not the first hire. And then it was from there, we were recruiting agents and building a brand. And, so getting that experience of not only learning how to be a real estate broker, but also how to market and how to approach, different advertising. And it was truly, as I look back on it now, it was truly a masterclass in business, really, more so than even real estate. But just got, I mean, so many good lessons out of that opportunity, and those have just all parlayed into where I'm at today.
Really an apprenticeship, right?
That's
Very
it.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself later in the conversation. I'm going to ask you for some tips or advice for
Sure.
newer brokers, but it sounds like that might be one of your tips would be to or one of your pieces of advice would be to connect with a successful broker in your area and as you said, offer to be an assistant or to help and to learn at the same time.
Yeah, and again, I can only speak for myself and the way I look at it. But I mean, if I ever have an agent that reaches out asking for advice or, like to me, I am somebody who likes to help other people and want to see other people succeed. I think in this business, there's so much business, right? There's more business than any of us could ever handle. So, you know, I always want to come at it from a stance of how can I help others grow and be successful, just like I was given that opportunity, right? I mean, Brian didn't have to hire me those years ago and could have easily figured it out. And God knows where I'd be now. But, it starts with an opportunity. And so anytime I get anybody, whether they're at our office here at Premier Sotheby's in Asheville, or I mean, I've talked to all sorts of brokers that have reached out asking for advice. And, I think there's a lot of other top agents like myself that, want to give back, want to help, want to see people succeed, not only for the feel good of helping somebody, but also for the sake of our industry, right? I mean, the more agents that are out there doing business the right way and forming relationships, that just helps everybody. As you grow into your career, and you're undoubtedly going to cross paths with the top agents again. And I think that's been such a key thing for me over the last 5, 6 years, especially, is having good rapport with all sorts of agents, whether they're at our office or outside our office, because at the end of the day, that's who we work with on a day-to-day basis. So having good rapport and good relationships, not only with clients, but with also with agents, is a huge benefit.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned, well, the word that comes to mind is stewardship. And, I think that we owe it, as agents, we owe it to ourselves and to our industry, to be better stewards of the industry or the best stewards we can be. Um, would you say that networking has been a very big part of your success as well?
I would say so to some extent. I think when I think of networking, going back to what I was just saying, I think networking with other agents is a critically important piece of this business that gets overlooked a lot. People are so focused on where's the next buyer coming from, where's the next seller coming from, how can I generate more leads, that I think we sometimes forget to just maintain good rapport with our peers. And, that can be as simple as if you have a free 2 hour window on a Wednesday, hey, who's got a broker open house? Let me pop by and see what's going on. Or reaching out and saying, hey, let's go grab a coffee or a cocktail or go play golf. I mean, it can be, and it's a human business at the end of the day. So I think that's important. And then yeah, for sure, over the years, I'm a relationship based guy, very outgoing, and so just meeting people in various scenarios, but never pursuing the deal, right? Never, that's never been my approach. I just nobody likes to be sold to having that kind of, the cliche car salesman approach. I think it's more so just being an authentic human being, and people really resonate with that. And it's been amazing to me the opportunities I've gotten just in the last few years. I mean, they were from relationships that I made a decade ago, right? So you just don't know how long it's going to take to get those opportunities. Prime example, just yesterday, I went on a listing appointment, that it's probably going to be roughly a $6.5 million listing. It's the mother and father of a guy that I literally met 12 years ago. And I've stayed in touch with he and his wife. They've looked at a couple properties, nothing, they haven't bought anything. But he literally called me 2 weeks ago and said, "Hey, my parents are ready to sell their place." And I told them you were the guy to list it. I mean, I guess that's networking 101 for you. But it
Yeah.
really just came from an authentic, good relationship and having their best interest over the years.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. The fact that, it can be it's a long-term commitment, and and the growth of a real estate business is a slow build generally.
Yeah,
I've been self-employed for almost a couple decades now, and of course, as professional real estate brokers, still self-employed, right? We're still responsible for our business and our income, and in previous business enterprises, networking was always very important. Networking with other local businesses who were, potential not only clients but also referral partners. But no, I never did much networking within my own industry, and I think I think to your point, I think that that's something that is often overlooked. And shouldn't be, especially in the real estate industry, how important it is to network also within your industry with other brokers, with your colleagues.
yeah, I think because at the end of the day, when you are doing a deal, we all represent our client's best interest. Whether I'm representing a buyer, a seller, or in North Carolina, we obviously can be dual agents and represent both. You owe a fiduciary duty to your client, but that doesn't mean that we're going to war with the other agent, right? At the end of the day, we have two parties that have agreed in theory on a price for an asset that they both want. And it's our job to then work together to make that deal happen. And not only make it happen, but make it smooth. It should be a smooth and fun transition for both parties, right? Somebody is hopefully moving on to their next chapter, and somebody is now inheriting this home as their next chapter, right? And it should be a fun and exciting process. And so nothing drives me crazier than when I hear these stories about, agents getting crazy and it getting combative, because it's just unnecessary. We all need to work together to see everybody succeed and everybody win. And I think if that approach is taken more often, our industry as a whole only benefits.
I totally agree. That's extremely well said. I totally agree with that point. I think that the sentiment that real estate is a relationship business is echoed often with my conversations with successful brokers like yourself. And I think that there are two paths for the relationships. There's the relationships that we have with our prospects, our clients, our sphere, um, and but also the relationships we have with our colleagues as well. And
Sure.
that nurturing those relationships obviously can come in really handy when it comes time, if you're on the other side of that transaction with that agent down the road.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think you're able to also add value then for your clients, right? Because sometimes having those relationships, you're going to be able to have access to opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be on the broader market. And,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we're all just humans, and we want to work with people we know, like, and trust. And so I think that's a big advantage of it, and it all just comes back to being a good human being and a genuine, authentic, good person.
It's really simple.
Very, very simple. Very simple.
What do you think are the biggest challenges in this industry for brokers, especially newer brokers who are just entering the industry? What's the biggest challenge to their success?
Well, I think it's twofold, right? You touched on it earlier. It's a business that truly takes several years to really get going, right? And you're trying to create opportunities, but I think in the initial phase of starting out as a broker, I, I don't know that desperation is the right word, but depending on your financial situation, you can really be having to make these deals happen and count on these commissions. And so I think it's challenging because, you really are trying to figure out this balance of being a good, authentic human being, but generating activity, getting deals done. And there's really no guidebook to it, right? And so that's where I see the biggest challenge is having to figure that out. And really, there's no guidebook for it because there's a lot of different ways to do this business. And it's all about figuring out what works well for you. Um, and then I think the other big obstacle is just gaining confidence, which that's anything in life, right? The longer you do something, the better you're going to be at it. And I have noticed that a lot of newer agents, they sometimes struggle advising clients because there's a trepidation on saying the hard thing, right? You go on the listing appointment and the seller says, well, this is a $2 million house. Having the confidence to say, unfortunately, it's not a $2 million house. It's a beautiful house. It has all sorts of great finishes and features to it, but it's $1.5 million at best, right? And being able to say that with the confidence that you're not afraid to walk away from it and save yourself a lot of time and money and effort, but also so that that client goes, okay, this guy, he knows what he's talking about, right? And it's taken, I mean, if I'm being 100% honest, it's probably taken me 10 plus years to get that. But now I go in a room and I can just tell whether, somebody's realistic, they're looking to me for guidance. I and that's what I can give. I can deliver that and just be confident in what I bring as a broker and what my skill set is. And so I would say those are probably the two biggest challenges are building that book of business, generating, the income, and then also growing in your level of confidence and skill as a broker. And unfortunately, the reality is it just takes time. I think we chatted about that, a couple of weeks ago when you and I talked. It's, if you can get over that 3.5 year hurdle, you really start to feel it. You're starting to make progress and you're starting to grow and you're starting to feel the compounding effect of this business because that's ultimately what happens. And you'll get to a level at some point where it's just automated. And yeah, you can go out and do different things to generate new business, but you're getting referrals and you're getting repeat business and you're as busy as you want to be. So those would be the biggest two in my mind.
Confidence comes with experience, and experience, it just takes time, right? I mean, it
Right.
takes time, it takes a lot of swings, a lot of at bats, and you got to be patient. In other small business enterprises that I've developed over the years, I've learned the importance of building that runway before you take the plane off, right? And focusing really on dialing in a business plan before you launch.
Right.
How important do you think that is for a real estate broker? I think that's something that's not talked a lot about early on.
Yeah, I think that is very important, and it is another area that's really overlooked because a lot of times we're just like Pop Tarts, right? Something pops up, you're ready to go and get it, and there's no focal point or plan on like, okay, what is my marketing commitment going to be? Am I going to be a Jeff and go all in on my podcasts? Am I really going to lean into video? What am I going to do that I'm truly going to commit to? And at a minimum, with any sort of marketing piece, especially, it's like you really got to commit to these things for at least a year to see the benefit, right? It's like, sometimes you talk to the agent who's like, well, I sent out a postcard and nobody called me. I'm like, well, did you send out a second postcard? did you put a QR code on it where you can track how many people are scanning your postcard? There's all these little things, but it's like the bigger, better deal, right? You send the one postcard and suddenly you're like, forget that. I need to get into video. And so next thing you know, you're just running around like crazy versus having an action plan that really works well. And there's a amazing broker in your market, Ben Bowen. He's a colleague of mine at
Mhm.
Premier Sotheby's, and whenever I'm thinking about this, I always think of Ben because he is so consistent with his plan of attack to generating new business. And not only is he consistent, he's always like the greatest guy to be like, hey, here's what's working for me, here's what's not working for me. But what I've learned so much from Ben is he shows up, he's consistent, and he follows the same plan of action. And he's killing it now. He sold $72 million worth of real estate last year. I mean, had an incredible year, and he's just a great guy, right? But he executes at a very high level, and he doesn't really sway from what he does well, which I think is super admirable.
I'm so glad that you brought him up. For listeners that don't know, I'm based in the Charlotte market and specifically the Lake Norman area. And Ben is a has been based here in the area for a long time. He's a highly experienced broker, and his I've been following his career even before I was in real estate, just via social media, and it is absolutely blown up. But it has taken some time and patience, and one introduction at a time. And
Right.
yeah, he's just so successful. He's also a really unassuming guy. Like to your point, he's just he's just a pretty down to earth person. I haven't met him in person, but just judging by reputation and what I see on social media, he's just a pretty unassuming and down to earth guy.
That's it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's just consistent. He's
Hmm.
just consistent. And I think, to wrap up your question, it's having an action plan that is going to add value to buyers and sellers and consistently executing on that action plan. And that is a huge piece of this puzzle to really, climb this ladder of brokerage and achieve your goals, whatever those may be.
The word system comes to mind too. The way you describe that, you really want to have a plan, have a system, and stick with it,
Yep.
at least for a period of time. But you need to give it a chance to gain some traction. Mike Feely's a Charlotte broker in the luxury market as well. That was a guest on this podcast, and he had mentioned that his direct mail marketing, and he, like most brokers, has there's some diversity in his marketing as far as digital and print. Um, but his direct mail marketing, he focused really on three uh, larger neighborhoods in the Lake Norman area and Charlotte area over the last 10 years or 15 years. And it took, he said, consistent direct mailings with good quality messaging and imagery consistently for a couple of years before he started reaping the rewards and the fruits of those efforts.
Without a doubt, because I think in any given real estate market, there's a lot of real estate brokers, right?
Hmm.
People have options. And so, if you are going after, if that's your focus, right, where you're going to we'll just focus on direct mail for a minute. You've got to establish yourself as the expert. And I think you have to figure out through trial and error a way to do that authentically, where you not only are sending a bunch of numbers and a spreadsheet at people, but you're putting yourself out there as who you are as a person and figuring out a way to blend those together where you can whether somebody's met you or not, they can get to know you and also understand you as the expert. I think that's really where the secret sauce is. And we now with technology, we have so many great avenues, right? Like I'm huge on the QR codes. So, if you're going to commit to do a 12-month mailer for a campaign, you should definitely put a QR code on all of that and make sure you're linking it back to something that is going to further build your brand in that neighborhood. And that may be your about me video where somebody can watch and, a 60-90 second video and be like, wow, this guy, he seems like a nice guy. Seems like he knows what he's talking about. He's sending us mailers. And, from there, that person that's the other thing people in this business, new brokers are like, well, nobody called. Let's, you know what? People aren't necessarily selling their house every single day, right? So it's a timing thing. And if you do it consistently, though, when, that person is ready to sell 2, 3, 4 years from now, you've been the guy that showed up in their mailbox every other week or every month for the last 3, 4 years. You've got a pretty strong shot at getting the call, at least to get an interview and get your foot in the door.
Yeah, QR code is a really good point. I cringe anytime I see a postcard that doesn't have a QR code for a local business. And yeah, that's a great way to just, again, encourage them to opt in to some other content that you may have, or also like QR code could go to a landing page with a free download. And then, now they're on your email list voluntarily, and, you can nurture that with some good weekly content, take your pick, whether it's neighborhood stuff, local lifestyle stuff, industry, market, real estate market information. But yeah, that's also great advice too. The QR code's kind of top of mind lately, so I'm
Yeah.
glad that you brought that up. Let's, on the topic of marketing, I want to wrap this up shortly because I know you're super busy, and we've already almost gotten through a half hour. These always go by so fast, but I wanted to get some tips or advice specifically on marketing for, let's say, a first or second year broker. What are some areas where you see some opportunities for marketing effectively without, necessarily breaking the bank?
Yeah, I love that question because I really pride myself in our marketing and what we bring to our listings. A lot of it is for me, it's been over the years developing relationships, right? So I have now, what I consider the best team that I've put together here in the Asheville area. And on every listing, we're doing professional photography, we're doing professional video and really investing in those things and taking the time to, obviously with schedule can't be at every single shoot, right? But being at as many of these shoots as possible and talking through the plan with the guys and making sure we're hitting the high notes, right? And then parlaying those media assets into, I think social media is such a phenomenal tool now that we can really reach the masses if you take the time to figure out how to use YouTube, how to use Instagram, how to use Facebook, and leverage those tools, we literally can reach anybody in the world. And if you can get creative and put out, the fun videos, and it doesn't always have to be video, right? If you're on a budget to start with and spending the money on a professional photographer is already a stretch, start there. Take those professional photos, make some fun reels that are showcasing the property, put them to trending audio, use hashtags. Next thing you know, you can have something go viral and have a huge, that's a huge tool to then utilize to go to a seller and say, hey, this is a previous example of something I've done. This video I put out had 30,000 views and, you know, helped get the home sold. So it's constantly being creative. I, for one, have really invested heavily in video, not only for my listings, but I also and trust me, everybody that if you follow me on social media, everyone's like, "Oh, you're so good at it." It's a nightmare at times, and honestly, it's taken a long time to get comfortable on camera. But that to me is again such low-hanging fruit, right? A seller has trusted you to sell their property. Why not get on camera and show that off, right? And then is there a way to then also think forward, right? If you're there filming the listing video, maybe you also do a quick side video that's targeted towards the neighborhood. That, let's just say we'll just pick, Main Street, right? And you jump on camera and you say, hey neighbors, here on Main Street, I'm super excited to bring this new listing to market. It's hitting the market these coming days, blah, blah, blah. Boom, there's your QR code for your postcard. Or you could also do the same type of video where I'm super excited to announce the successful sale of this beautiful home. It was awesome to represent this property. If I can ever help you in the future, please let me know. and it goes into the edit and it's all the great shots, right? Like that is showing professionalism, creativity, somebody who's really standing out amongst their peers. And that's what we're constantly seeking, I think, in this business. If you really want to be a top broker, you cannot rest on your laurels. You can't just simply say, "Oh, I do professional photography." That's great. Everybody does professional photography. Are you spending the money to do twilight photography? Are you doing drone? Are you doing 3D tours? What are you doing to separate yourself from others? And so I think video is a massive, massive opportunity. And I'll close with one really quick story on what video has done for my business. I recently listed a home here in Asheville for $24 million. It is the third most expensive listing in the state. And that opportunity all came from video. The owners of that estate had tried to go about that property by selling it as we'll call it a for sale by owner. They invested in a lot of marketing and they were basically representing themselves and trying to cast this broad net. Well, 2 years ago, that launched, right? And there was a lot of local publicity about it. So I just reached out to the sellers. There was a website, and I literally did an inquiry and said, "Hi, my name's Alec. I'm a broker with Premier Sotheby's here in Asheville. I would love to come and do a video tour of your house. I do a lot of video content, and I think your place is exquisite, and it would be awesome to create some content and share that." They emailed me back, "What exactly do you have in mind? We're interested about this." And I sent them a couple links and said, basically, "I'd love to come and spend 4 or 5 hours, bring my guy, we'll film, I'll send you guys all the content to approve. And then it'll literally just be, me adding value to my social media following, my email database. People love looking at real estate, right? So if I have an opportunity to share that, it's a win-win." So we showed up, we shot, we sent them the video. They loved it. And from there, that video, I was able to get a good view count on YouTube as well, which was great. And that was kind of that. Didn't really think much of it. Kind of kept in touch with the manager of the estate. And late last year, they approached me and said, "Hey, we were really impressed by you kind of coming forward and being creative and wanting to offer something like that. We'd like to talk to you about potentially listing the property." And that started the conversation, right? And that was literally just it was thinking outside the box. And it wasn't done in a way. I didn't go into it going, "Oh, I'm going to get this listing." It was more so this is the most expensive at the time. It was the most expensive property in North Carolina. I'm going to go do a video for it. And it parlayed into, what is now one of the largest listings in my career. So I think just thinking outside the box, being creative and doing the business differently than the traditional model has really helped me, especially in the last 3, 4 years, completely launch to a whole new level.
I love that story, and I love the way you approached that, and that resonates with me a lot because that aligns really with some efforts that I've made here locally as well. So I definitely appreciate where you were coming from there. So cool. I mean, how important is it to bring value first, without the ask,
That's
right?
it. That's
Yeah,
it. And
yeah,
I mean, in that instance, I truly was like, in my head, I'm like, I don't, these guys could list with whoever they want. It's probably not
sure.
me. I think it'd be cool to make some content.
Also, I'm so glad. I was wondering if we were going to get a chance to talk about your $24 million listing in Asheville. That's amazing. Can you share just a broad overview of that property? Like what's it all about?
Yeah, so Deerhaven Gardens is really the premier estate of Asheville and really Western North Carolina. Sits on 5 acres, just unbelievable. Over 13,000 square feet under roof, with some of the most gorgeous, gorgeous gardens you've ever seen. The 5 acres is completely manicured with trails. The property has a 50-foot infinity edge swimming pool looking out on the mountains, huge outdoor kitchen, True tennis court. I mean, it is a total showpiece. So that's been a really, really fun property to take on. And again, with the marketing on that, we've had a lot of fun with it. And we're kind of slowly rolling out some of the different content we've created. We brought in models for that to kind of go for more of a lifestyle element that we're going to do some things with. So yeah, it's been really a really cool opportunity, and I'm super grateful to be the one that got tagged to do it.
I love it. I'll have a link to the video of that property as well in the show notes for this episode, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that'd
And
be awesome.
I'll follow up with you to see if I can get some other links as well. Um, Alec, I really appreciate your time. Obviously, I understand how busy you are. You've been so generous with your time since I met you these last few weeks. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join the podcast, share a little bit of your story and some insights and advice for newer brokers who might be listening to this. Just super thankful, and I really appreciate it. And for
Absolutely.
brokers who want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably Instagram. I'm a big Instagram guy. Handle is at Alec Cantley Real Estate, and yeah, would love to connect with people and see again what other brokers are doing, and create some cool content together. I think doing this kind of thing is awesome, and being able to truly connect and help other people. That's what we get an opportunity to do. So I'm very appreciative for you asking me to come on, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alec Cantley is a broker with Premier Sotheby's International Realty, serving the Asheville, North Carolina market. And Alec, I'll have the Instagram handle in the show notes as well.
It's awesome.
Thanks again for joining the podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. Have an awesome day.